This interview is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program, Living Legends Collection. This interview was originally conducted on March the 18th, 1971. The interview was conducted by Mr. Pendleton Woods. The interviewee is Mrs. Betty Pearson, that's capital Pearson, of Claremore, Oklahoma. This material is being re-recorded on November the 3rd, 1986, for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener.
This is Penn Woods interviewing for the Oklahoma Living Legends. We're at Claremore on the campus of Oklahoma Military Academy. This is March the 18th, 1971. I'm interviewing Mrs. Betty Pearson, one of the old-timers from Oolagah. Ms. Pearson will be reminiscing about some of the early days of Oolagah and of some of the individuals that she has known. Ms. Pearson, I wonder to begin with if you would tell us just a little about your early days, who your father and mother were, your mother's maiden name, where they were from, then where you were born and where you went to school. A little bit about that.
Well, my father was from Germany, and my mother, she was from Tahlequah. She was an Indian girl born in Tahlequah. And they was John F. Smith.
And your mother's name?
And Mary J. Smith. And they were 9 children born from...
Which were you?
And they was 7 boys and 2 girls. But 4 of my brothers passed away, and my sister has passed away. And all of us children were born in Oolagah, except my oldest brother. He was born in Claremore, on John Bullitt Place. And
could you describe Oolagah as you first remember it at that time?
that's what?
Describe the town of Oolagah as you first remember it.
Well, when I was a girl, there was several stores there. And Oolagah at them days were pretty rough. The boys in town would get drunk and they would ride up and down the streets and shoot up the streets. And at that time we had one church at Oolagah, and of course we'd have our Christmas programs in that church, a community building, a community Christmas tree. And lots of times whenever we'd come out of the building going home, maybe we'd stumble over a drunk man as we went home. But the town, I don't know, we had a bank, we had a drugstore, we had 2 or 3 grocery stores, and we had one grocery store that one man run for years and years. His name was I.W.W. Beck, but he finally passed away at an old age. And let's see. Of course, all my schoolmates, I knew all of them, and at that time they were 2 schools. That was in the early 90s in Oolagah, and one was an Indian school and one was a white school. And the 2 schools wasn't very far apart, but and whenever the schools dismissed of an evening, if the Indian children and the white children got anyways close together, they was fighting, and they just fought all the time. Now, what in the world they fought for, I don't know, and I was right in the bunch, but I don't know what we was fighting for.
Who usually won? Who usually won?
You might know. I don't know. You know, my father was a white man, but my mother was an Indian. And my father always tried to teach us children to not abuse the white folks. But, you know, he didn't know we did, but we did. We was right in with the bunch. When they all had a fight, we had a gang fight, and then me and my brother was right in there, too. But we thought we was just doing something wonderful then, but after all, it was
Your
terrible.
father was white, your mother was Indian.
Yeah.
Right? Which school did you go to?
I went to Indian school.
I see.
Yeah.
Did all of them, what percentage of Indian blood did you have to be required to go to Indian school? Or was there a...
And there wasn't, I don't think. I don't think there was.
Were they both mission schools?
Pardon?
Were they both mission schools?
Well, I don't know. Let's see.
How large were these schools?
They wasn't too many. Now, the Indian school was built up in a pasture, and they built a stilt over the fence, you know, for 'em to go over, and we was just right in the pasture up there. And the MOW, I believe it was WOW, Lodge, held their meetings up there in that building at that time. And they had a chest up there, and they kept that chest locked all the time. Well, of course, you know, kids, they always missed it and want to know what's in everything. But they kept it locked, and we couldn't find out what was in it. So one Monday, met on Monday night, and Tuesday morning we went up there, and that was unlocked. Well, of course, you know, we just started through that like wildfire. But the first thing we done, we opened the door, the lid up, and there was a skeleton. Well, that done it. Boy, we didn't even close the lid. We just went out of that building like fire. And we never went in either till the teacher came. We was afraid.
Were you in Indian schools all the way through public school?
No. After that, why, then the whites and the Indians went together, and they had good schools, and they all got along good. And why they were separated like that, like they was, and fought like they did, I don't know. And now when we all went together, why, we were all good friends, good close friends, and all got along good.
Whereas the Indian school mainly Cherokee?
Maine.
Cherokee.
Yeah, Cherokee.
Are you Cherokee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This may break the train of thought. Were you playing with Will Rogers?
Oh, my land, yes.
That's one thing we wanted to...
Yeah. Will Rogers, when he was a boy growing up, he was born down there, East Oolagah, you know, on that ranch. And he rode a bicycle to town, to Oolagah all the time. And at them days, there wasn't no section lines, there wasn't no fences. All you done just cut across the fields. And he rode his bicycle to Oolagah all the time when he went. And he never was in Claremore till he's 12 years old. He didn't see Claremore till he's 12 years old. So, well, I just really don't know them.
Did you recognize any of the showmanship in him in the early days? Was he a showman or a cut-up? Can you think of any particular things that might reflect that?
Oh, I can't think of anything right now. You caught me right.
Because our voices don't go into it.
No.
Your school teachers. And,
Yes, I remember several of my school teachers. Sure. I don't know whether you ever heard of Jack White or not.
no,
He was a school.
just sing a little closer.
Oh, he was a school teacher there,
Name again.
Jack White. And then there was D.M. Battlefield that taught up there. He taught up there for several years. And then, there was a Pearl Drew. There was a lot of teachers that I just can't recall right now.
Well, if there was any pet, any favorites you liked better than the other, or that taught you anything special that you always remembered or something.
You mean the teachers and the teachers or the pupils?
Well, either.
Either.
So you remember most of the incidents.
We played black man, drop the handkerchief, and hide and go to seek, and just things like that.
Did you have picnics, hay rides, things
No,
of that sort?
no, not at that time. Later on, they got to where they did have hay rides, but at that time they didn't.
Did your family farm?
Yeah, they farmed. We had a big farm, and my father him and mother moved there in 1891, I guess. My brother was born in Fillmore, and I was born in 1892 in Oolagah. And at that time, there wasn't no railroad going through Oolagah. And the farmers around there that raised their wheat, they had to haul their wheat to Coffeyville, Kansas by wagon and have their wheat ground make their flour for their winter supply. And they'd go one day and come back the next. That's the way they got their flour.
Where'd you get your water?
Well, as it happened, we had plenty of water. Most everybody in town, that is, a lot of people had their own water, but we had 2 good wells on our place, and there was a number of people hauled water from there every day. And my father got a well drill, and he drilled a lot of wells in Oolagah. Yes, sir.
Did he use a stick of divining rod to find water, or?
Well, sometimes he'd go to drill a well for somebody, and they'd want it witched.
Yeah.
So they'd have it witched. But in the west part of town, they could might near get water anywhere there. It wasn't no trouble. But it was in the east part of town where they had their trouble getting water.
How far down they have to drill to get water?
Well, now in the west part of the town, they didn't have to drill over 30 feet. And in the east part of town, there's some deep wells up there. There was a deep well drilled on the place that we moved on. I think it was 70 feet deep. And it was pretty good water. It was hard, but it was pretty good water. But when it began to get kind of low, why, it got salty. Got salty.
Was there any oil wells or any exploration?
Well, there was some gas wells drilled there, and they used gas quite a while, but it finally played out. And L.J. Snar he took care of that, the gas.
Well, you used wood for fuel then, did you?
Wood and coal.
You got coal.
Yeah, wood and coal most of the time.
How far did you, were there any local coal mines or strip mines that you could get coal from?
Yeah, they had one out west of town, and that was the way that most of the men made their living, was hauling coal. Of course, they had to get up at 4 o'clock, and that was a terrible life. But you know now, listen, the younger generation wouldn't do that now, I don't imagine. But they'd have to get up at 4 o'clock, and they wouldn't get in till way late in the night. And then maybe they'd come in just all wet and dirty, you know. It was pitiful. But the younger generation has really had it nice. They don't realize what we went through with, by no means. No, sir.
Tell us about some of those Christmas programs you used to have at the...
Well, it was just a community building, you know, a community Christmas tree. Of course, everybody come, and they all brought gifts for somebody or another, and they'd have a nice tree, and they'd distribute those gifts, and they'd hand out their candy, and they'd have their programs, and they were just nice, just awful nice. Well, you know, they don't have Christmas trees like that anymore.
Did
Sure.
you ever perform on the program?
Oh, yes.
What'd you do?
Heck, I don't know. I done everything.
What is it?
Anything they wanted me to do, I done it.
I imagine they did a lot of making, recitations.
Yeah, recitations and singing. And, sometimes they'd have a drill or something like that.
You used to have any spelling bees when you were in school?
Oh, yes, a lot of them.
Were you pretty good at it?
Pretty good. And on Friday evenings, well, they always had something on Friday afternoon. But nowadays, you know, they just have everything all through the week and all through but Friday evening is the only time we'd have anything. We went there at 9 o'clock, stayed till 4 o'clock. And then Friday evening, we had a spelling match or something like that. Why, it would be on Friday evening. Yeah.
Have any square dances in those days?
Yeah, they had them, but I didn't get to go to many. My folks never did approve of me going to dances. However, I run off a lot of times and went.
What church did dominate that area? What sect?
The Methodist Church. Yeah, the Methodist Church was there for years and years and years. I was converted in that church and joined that church, and it's been there. That church has been there for ever since I was about 6 years old, I guess.
Still there?
No, so they tore it down about 2 years ago. The Presbyterians built a new church there, and they couldn't pay for it, got behind, and their membership fell off, and they had to sell their building. So the Methodists needed more room. They had already built more room on the old Methodist Church, but they needed more room, and they bought this room, this building. So then after they bought this building, why, they turned that old Methodist building in a community building, and it was used for a community building up until about 3 years ago. And they tore it down to put a shelter there for the pioneers, and they had their pioneer meeting. And they haven't got it all complete yet. They've got a lot of it done, but they've not got it complete yet. And then later on, they had a holiness meeting. They held a revival meeting in the Methodist Church, and then after it closed, why they organized holiness meeting, and it was started up in an old store building, and that run for years and years. There were just two of the churches in for a long time. Well, now there's 5 churches in Oolagah, and but 4 of them in operation, but there's one of them that isn't in operation right now. So we've got plenty of churches in Oolagah. We've got a Pentecostal, we've got the Church of God of Prophecy, and we've got a First Baptist and the Methodist now.
Well, in this First Methodist church that you attended, did they have a regular minister there every Sunday, or did he handle several other churches?
No. Now, we had a minister there all the time, regular. We had a parsonage there, and he lived in the parsonage. And but now we don't. We just have a minister that he preaches at Foyle, and then comes to Oolagah and preaches. Turn that off now. They died in January the 8th, 1939.
39.
And my mother.
Was he active up?
No, he wasn't. He was pretty poorly. He was sick. He was in the hospital quite a while. And my mother died in August the 10th in 56. And then my sister died in June 59. And then I had 2 brothers, died in 62. One of them died in January. January. Well, he had just been dead a week when my other brother died in the 1st February.
You're the last one.
And in
You have
62.
children?
I have one. I have one daughter, Lorena Minette, in Oolagah.
Did Will Rogers come back to Oolagah after he was
Oh,
famous? And
oh,
did they have big celebrations
Yes,
for him?
sir. Well, they never did have no big celebrations. You know, Crime War just took everything away from Oolagah. If they had any celebrations, you see, they got the Will Rogers Memorial and everything down at Crime War. But oh, I'll tell you, whenever anyone got word that Will Rogers was coming to Oolagah, now they was crowd. They all wanted to see him.
Did your father come directly from Germany to the Oolagah?
No,
How did he happen to come to this part of the country?
well, I just don't want that recorded.
Why? You just say that he came over here, and then what was he doing before, you know, you don't know, but he just say that.
And my father left Germany when he was 17 and came to this country.
You don't know how he got here.
I don't know how he got here, and I don't know what he done after he got here.
Well, he met his wife up in Tulsa, I heard.
Yeah, he met my mother in Tahlequah, and they were married in Tahlequah, and I don't know what year they were married.
Didn't she have a last name?
Cook, Mary Jane Cook was her name.
Cook.
Mary Jane Cook was her name. Cherokee. That's right. Yeah.
She was probably wasn't full blood either.
Oh no, we wasn't full bloods. I forget how much blood we had. I ought to know, but I don't. You know, a lot of these things I forget. Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing. Now shut that off. I'll tell you another thing. My husband and I was school day sweethearts. And in 1912, we were married the 25th day of December. And we moved out on a farm there east of town. It was called the George Merrifield Range, or farming land. And we stayed there 16 years. And then we bought our place in town and moved there, and we've been there ever since.
Well, now, did you raise stock, or did you raise?
Oh yeah, we raised stock.
When did stock first come in up here in this part? You said your father raised wheat.
They was stock ever since I remember. They was stock when I got big enough to know what stock was. Of course, we had the ranch. We had cattle and we had horses, and you know, them days they farmed with horses. They didn't think you didn't know what a tractor was. And they just farmed with horses and machinery like that.
And so you all farmed. I mean, your father, he farmed before.
Oh yeah. He farmed. I've been on the farm all my life. Of course, we're still on the farm now, but we don't farm. We rent our farm out. We still have it, but we have our pasture, and we rent our farming land out. We don't do nothing like that. Well, you know, I believe that's about all I know.
Let me ask you one thing. Do you remember any? Come on, come on.
Well, I was a married woman before I ever went to Tulsa. I had always wanted to go to Tulsa, and so finally, after I got married, been married 2 or 3 years, I got to go to Tulsa, and I thought it was a wonderful place, and I really had a good time.
What do you remember about it?
Just going in the stores and looking around and seeing things in there that I didn't see at home.
How did you go from Oolagah over to Tulsa?
Well, they was one of our neighbor boys took me and his mother to Tulsa. After he got a car, we drove to Tulsa.
Did you stay all night?
Oh no, man, no. We had to get back and milk them cows. We couldn't go and stay all night anywhere.
Yes, how were the roads like when you started farming in that area?
The roads, whenever it rained or snow, would might near get impassable. You couldn't get through them a horseback hardly, let alone in a vehicle of any kind.
Did your husband or your father ever do any hunting in this area? And if so, what did they?
No, my father didn't do no hunting, and he was just too busy trying to make a living for us kids.
Well, didn't you kill your own meat?
Oh yeah, and but my husband, now we lived out along Bluff, and after we was married, he did quite a bit of trapping out there, and he caught a lot of bobcats and city cats and skunks and things like that. And of course, them days they'd sell the pelts, you see, and get something out of them. But
Did you ever shoot squirrel to eat?
oh yeah, squirrels and rabbits.
Tell us about the butchering time. What about that?
Oh dear, that's too much work for anything. That's just too much work to talk about. But whenever it come time to kill, most everybody around there had their own meat, their own hogs, and big families. And land of mercy, they'd kill 5 and 6 hogs, great big old hogs. I'll tell you the job, but the neighbors would go together and they'd go and help one another. And then they'd come and help render up your lard and grind your sausage and help you put your meat away.
What time of the year would that be?
Well, that would be after it got cold enough, needed keep. You see, we didn't have no refrigerators or anything like that. We just had to salt it down and then take it out of that salt and wash it off and hang it up and smoke it with this good old hickory smoke. And it'd take maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days to smoke it, but it was good when you got it smoked.
Did you kill cattle too?
Well, not when I was a girl. We didn't, because in them days they didn't have no way to keep their meat, you know. Now they'd whenever the creeks up there would freeze over, there was a man there by the name of Skidmore that built him a little house up there and put sawdust in it, you know, to keep, and they'd go down there and they'd saw that ice off them creeks in blocks and store it in there to sell through the summer months.
Would you ever make jerky? Dry beef? Did you ever jerky? Never did any of that.
No, we never did do none of that.
What about your gardens and canning and putting stuff up for?
Oh, now that's a question. We'd make big gardens, great big gardens. When it got ready to can and put up, we'd work days and days canning and putting up the fruit and the vegetables for our winter use.
Did you ever go to fairs? Any fairs? Any fairs?
Not for, we didn't for, I don't think we went to any after I was even married. I don't remember of ever going to a fair before we were married. But we went to several then.
Where was the nearest one then?
Nearest one's Claremore. But they didn't have the fairs them days like they have now. They, of course, they had a lot of vegetables and corn and wheat and head feed and stuff like that, you know. But that was about all. Yeah.
Did you folks ship out cattle to markets and where?
My father would ship his cattle to Kansas City, load them there at the depot and send them to Kansas City.
What kind of cattle did he raise?
Mostly white face. They were mostly white face. Well, I believe
There's no sign-off for this interview. It simply ends in mid-sentence, and there's no indication that this interview is continued anywhere else on this Living Legend master tape or on any other Living Legends master tape in this collection.